What if I told you you've been routing your effects on the quad cortex entirely wrong? That's right, it's all wrong. No, I'm not talking about putting your delay and reverb in front or after the amp. I'm talking about how we route our reverb, our modulation, our delay to the output of the quad cortex. And you might find yourself asking, how did I come across this realization? Well, let me tell you. I randomly got into wet, dry, wet rig setups this past week for who knows what reason. But if you don't know what it is, essentially you're gonna split your signal into 3 different outputs. So you'll have a mono dry signal, and then you're also gonna split the output of your amp and send it through all your wet effects. So modulation, delay, choruses, and those go to separate speaker cabs, and then you have basically the wet as a stereo left and right. And if that still didn't make sense to you, basically think of it like this. You have your overdriven guitar sound and it comes straight out of the speakers. You also have your really reverbed and modulated out guitar sound also coming to the speakers, but you have control over how loud or soft that part is. So let's start here. This is how I've been routing my effects on the quad cortex. It's a standard stereo amp setup. So I have my drives, they split into 2 different amps, and then I have a stereo modulation, a stereo delay, and a stereo reverb. It sounds like this. I think it sounds awesome. It's very spacious and stereo, but since I'm so hell-bent on making the quad cortex sound as good as it possibly can by itself, I started thinking maybe there's a way to apply this wet, dry, wet thing to the quad cortex. I was doing some research, I read an article by Line 6 about the helix and found that the principles they were saying would definitely apply here. Now watch this. I'm gonna take the exact same setting, but I'm gonna split the delay and verbs. So rather than having the delay go into the reverb, I'm gonna have the delay be on its own lane and the reverb be on its own lane. So both effects are still on and coming out of the same output, but they're isolated from each other. Kind of like using a send in mixing in a DAW. It sounds like this. Pretty cool, right? And you know what else will be pretty cool? If you subscribe to this channel if you haven't yet already. Many thanks. As I was alluding to, we get more clarity with our guitar signal, and I think even the delay echoes are more clear as well. But let's take this one step further. We're gonna lose our stereo amp setup in favor of 1 amp so that we can use lane 2 as a separated send for our modulation effects. So now we have all our modulation, delay, and reverb hitting the same output, but they hit them separately. Check it out. What do you think? Take a second to comment below which routing is your favorite before I start coloring your opinions with what I thought. Okay, to me, I thought the second option actually sounded the best. And just to clarify, that's the one where we have only the delay and the reverb separated, not the modulation as well. This routing gives a lot more clarity to our guitar while also clearing up a lot of the delay trails, and it maintains our wide stereo image we had in our normal stereo amp setup. This feels like the sweet spot to me. Also cool about the last 2 configurations, because we're now separating our effects almost like we would on send. You can really ramp up the mix on them and get some pretty crazy sounds that would honestly just sound like mush in our normal stereo amp setup. And that's not to say musical mush couldn't be great. If you like that stereo sound where it's just tons of reverb and delay, I get it. I like that too in a lot of circumstances, so nothing wrong with that. I'd say this routing is a pretty top-notch hack for those of you with the quad Cortex. Definitely try it out. It's gonna sound great in worship. It's gonna sound great in pop. It'll honestly sound great in anything. I just turned all my distortions on and it sounded like Journey, so it'll really give you that ability to maintain your guitar clarity and have fun with some pretty wild high mix effects. And that's a wrap for today. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know your favorite quad Cortex routings down below if there's something I missed. Drop a like on the video, subscribe if you're new. I got tons of videos here on guitar, the quad Cortex stories, and the like, and I will catch you next time.